Hello again, everyone. This is Randy, your sewing machine man, and today we're doing by request how to make a stitch look right, and what does a right stitch look like when it looks proper. How do you know it's proper? Let's see. Probably 3 or 4 people this week call me with stitch not looking right. Of course, they say they have a tension problem, and sometimes it is tension, a lot of times it's something else. But when people say they have a tension problem, I always correct them and say you have a bad stitch. If it's a good stitch, we wouldn't be having a conversation. So it's always a bad stitch that causes me to get involved. Bad stitch. What's it caused by? A lot of things. But here's what a good stitch looks like before we get started, just for a point of reference. On the top here, you can see where I stitched out. You look across it at an angle. You can't look straight down at the stitch and see if it's good or not. Maybe you can, but not always. You want to get it on the thinnest plane possible, because sometimes the stitch will get lost in any kind of a thickness. So you get where it's as thin as possible, and you look across it at the angle, and you see that it looks like little waves on the ocean. That's the one on the top, the green one. It's going to look like waves on the ocean. It's going to go like that. And on the other side, of course, with the red, it'll look like waves on the ocean on the other side. That's when it's balanced properly. That's when the top equals the bottom. A lot of times you can have the top equal the bottom rather, and then you can go to zigzag and you'll get a different look. You'll get a different look because when you throw it in zigzag, things happen differently. On a narrow zigzag, things will still look balanced. See, it's locking on the edges here. Little red, little green. When you go to the wider, it looks a little bit more off. As the stitch length gets longer or the stitch gets wider, the stitch appearance will change underneath. Not much on the top, mostly on the bottom, depending on the machine. So then you make a slight adjustment in the tension. 3 to 5 is the range. You start at 4 and work your way up or down. Now, when you have everything set perfectly like this, and then you go to a satin stitch or a monogramming stitch, or you're going to go around and get a real wide stitch that's narrow, short, whatever. When it's close together, you'll notice the dynamics change considerably. All of a sudden the underneath gets real tight and the top gets real loose. That's just going to happen, and that's the way to use it, because usually when you're doing a applique or something like that, you want the predominant color to be on top and you don't want the bottom to ride up. So that's not unusual. When it looks like this to start straight stitch, it'll look like that on your real close together satin stitch. Starting out like that, looking at it at an angle, waves on the ocean. Now, when it doesn't look like waves on the ocean, you'll get odds and ends like so. All of a sudden on the bottom, you look here in the top, when you look on the bottom, see it's got, get it focused here, got those little bumps in the bottom, little bitty bumps. You can catch your nail on them, where it says upper tension on 2. Started out on 4 and you had the perfect stitch, and all you had to do is take it from 4 down to 2, and all of a sudden the top still looks good. The bottom, you get those little bumps that you can catch your nail on up here on top. You can catch them. You see it starting to just start looping on 2. Now we moved it on down to 1, and then it really starts going south. You can see those loops get a lot bigger. Just going from 4 to 2, you get there, then to 1, you get these. That's your top stitch. Your red is starting to show underneath. It's almost always backwards from what you would think. So you're getting the red on the bottom because the number's lower on top. You get loops underneath. Now you get underneath. When your underneath gets completely unthreaded or improperly threaded, you get this. That's when you actually have misthreaded the machine. There's no tension whatsoever. You got super loops underneath because maybe you didn't get the thread between the tension disc. You got them in front or behind, or heaven forbid you missed your take-up lever, and it'll just lock up. But that's when it's totally misthreaded. So you always want to make sure you have it threaded properly. Use the right size thread. If you get loops underneath like this, sometimes it'll be an imbalance of the thread. The bottom is light, the top is heavy, then you'll get this imbalance. But when you have this on the bottom, you'll be able to just pull those stitches right out. You'll grab it and you'll pull it, and your stitch will just disappear. It'll go away, gone. You get the top up here and you grab it, and it just completely comes undone. You can't have that. So you want it to be balanced. Always start out with it about 4. 3 to 5 is the range. If you're on a machine and 4 doesn't get it done, there may be an obstruction between the tension disc, the thread's not touching, the thread's not threaded properly, or your bobbin is not loaded properly. If this bobbin is just dropped in here and it's just feeding off, you have no tension at all. You always make sure you put your finger on it, slide it in the slot, in about the 6 o'clock position, and over to the left. All your drop-in bobbins are going to be that way. When you load them, unless it's a self-winding touch and sew, you're going to load it here, bring it over, and you'll pull. You'll make sure you have resistance, and then you'll have no problem on the bottom. Rarely is a problem on the bottom unless the bottom has been misthreaded and the thread is not in the slot. I think 3 times this week we had machines that the thread wasn't in the slot. They thought they put it in, it jumped out. That happens. And sometimes you can have it out of the slot and the thread will drag on the top here and catch. So make sure your bobbin's loaded properly. A lot of these machines have the threading diagram on the inside. Get your book, watch a video. But this week, so many machines I probably fix about 10 machines a week on average on the phone. If the folks and I can get together on what the jargon is, you know, presser lifter, tension assembly, bobbin, as long as everybody knows. Some people are real experienced, they know. Some people are new and they don't know what all this stuff is called. So if we can get together on the vernacular and the jargon and what's called what, we can usually get it figured out, because I don't want to come out to your house and charge you the money just to tell your machine's not threaded properly. So if you call me and say it's doing this or doing that, we'll discuss what the stitch looks like. Is it looping underneath? Has it got a problem on top? And we'll figure out what it is. It'll be something usually simple. If it's a threading thing, fine. Tension is one of 100 things that'll cause a bad stitch. But if you got a bad stitch, let's don't, you know, take your money just to show you how to thread it. Make sure you have it threaded right thread, bobbin loaded properly.